Begin Again is the seventh studio album from singer-songwriter and musician Norah Jones. If the album feels a bit disjointed thematically from track to track on your first listen, there's a good reason. Begin Again cannot really be defined as an album per se because it's not really an album. It's instead a collection of singles. But for the convenience of language, I will refer to it as an album in this review. The album is a sparse 7 tracks and a running time of 29 minutes, and while it was released in 2019, a large chunk of the album's 7 tracks were released as advance singles during 2018. This release comes off the heels of what I felt was positively her best album of her career. I'm talking about 2016's Daybreak. And for this reason, my expectations for her next album were very high, to say the least. I wasn't the only one who felt this way. Most of the press on Daybreak was that it was an outstanding effort. And listening to Begin Again, I have to wonder if perhaps Norah Jones sensed those high expectations, both from music fans and music critics. And is there really any difference anymore? So instead of crafting an album, per se, Norah Jones decided instead to record a single and release it. Then record another single and release it. Wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. Along the way, she experimented with different collaborators like Jeff Tweedy of Wilco and Thomas Bartlett. This approach probably served her well. It softened expectations and gave her a chance to experiment without having the pressure of having to follow up one of her most critically acclaimed albums. If you listen to the singles as they came out, you pretty much know what you are getting with this album, and probably don't need me to tell you if it's good or not. I'm sure you've already made up your mind in that regard. But if you want to know what I think of the tracks, let's talk about them now. Co-written with Thomas Bartlett, My Heart is Full is certainly the most experimental of the 7 songs that comprise Begin Again, and more experimental than anything I've heard from her previously. The track is a powerful chant meditation about a broken society and broken relationships. It feels like the opening of a concept album dealing with bigger themes, and makes me wish the rest of that concept album was there to follow it. Still, though, I enjoyed it, and perhaps Miss Jones will someday take this track and build an album out of it. The heavy dark jazz influence of the title track, Begin Again, feels like a lost track from Daybreak and does surprisingly continue the themes of My Heart is Full. The song's lyrics are filled with personal reflections on the crazy divisiveness of our times, and the song ends with a repeating chant of asking, "Can we begin again? Can we begin again?" This is perhaps my favorite track on the entire album. With its torch ballad feel, track 3, It Was You, at first glance sounds like the Norah Jones that we know from past albums. But the song's lyrics have me guessing, though. The first time I thought it might be about a jilted lover, but now I think it might be about a lover that she's crazy about. Or maybe a lover that's making her crazy. It's one of the few songs that features her as the sole songwriter, and it definitely comes off as the most personal so far. Track 4, A Song with No Name, is my second favorite song on the album, and my affection for it keeps growing with each listen. With this track, we step into the kind of spacey acoustic Americana territory that would not sound out of place on one of Robert Plant's more recent solo albums. Norah Jones has co-written this song about an unrequited love with Jeff Tweedy, and it hints at some very dark themes of obsession and murder, but with an existential twist. After the album's opening track, Uh-Oh, is the second most experimental track on Begin Again, and I guess it should be since it was also co-written with Thomas Bartlett. This track mixes a subtle early 70s soul R&B vibe with modern drum patches. I have been very critical of the use of autotune in contemporary pop, but using the analogy of a light sprinkle of seasoning on a well-cooked meal, Uh-Oh shows us how to use autotune in exactly the right way. I enjoy this slow-burning dance jam, and it makes me want to pull out my guitar and jam to it. The next song, Wintertime, might be my least favorite track on the album, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. It just means that it's not as strong as the other 6. With its mix of Americana and jazz, Wintertime feels like the Norah Jones of Come Away With Me. It's a very nice song, but not the album's strongest in my opinion. Co-written with Sarah Oda, Brian Blade, and Christopher Thomas, Just a Little Bit is my third favorite song on the album. I love how the song combines elements that Norah Jones has used plenty of times in the past, jazz, soul, blues, but still has an indefinable musical quality to it that makes it impossible to resist. It's like getting served a mystery dessert of unique flavor combinations. You could puzzle over what it's made of, but why bother? It's just too delicious. Like I said at the beginning, at first listen, Begin Again felt a bit disjointed, but it's been growing on me with each consecutive listen. Maybe not as good as Daybreak to be sure, but then it doesn't need to be. It's a collection of singles, and I also feel like it's an artist in transition, cooling her jets a bit, experimenting, and getting into musical shape for perhaps an even stronger next album. If you're already a fan, this is definitely a must-have. If you aren't, or you haven't really picked up one of her albums since her debut, Come Away With Me, I would recommend you getting reacquainted by listening to Daybreak first. I'm giving this 3.5 out of 4 stars. No, it's not as great as Daybreak, which I would give 4 stars, but I have to give it props just for daring to try new things and pulling it off. This is TJR, and if you want to see me do more album reviews like this, please consider becoming a patron supporter and following the orange P logo on this video. Patron supporters get exclusive advance and behind-the-scenes content, and they are the only ones who get to suggest video topics. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.